When someone speaks to you, they're not just using words, they're revealing their intentions, their mindset, and sometimes their power plays. And as women, we're often conditioned to overlook the warning signs hiding in plain sight. But today, I want to change that. In this talk, we're going to break down the subtle, dangerous phrases a man can say that undermine your boundaries, challenge your confidence, and test your emotional strength. Because once you learn to identify these cues, you won't just protect yourself, you'll take back control. Recognizing covert disrespect instantly begins with sharpening your internal radar for the subtle cues people often miss. Most disrespect doesn't arrive loudly or dramatically. It arrives quietly, disguised as a joke, a casual comment, or a tone that doesn't match the words being spoken. When you learn to identify these signals in real time, you can protect your emotional space before someone gradually erodes it. Covert disrespect is powerful because it thrives in ambiguity. The other person can always claim they didn't mean it that way, but your job is not to analyze their excuses. Your job is to listen to your instincts and read the intention behind the delivery. Pay attention to tone first. People reveal their true thoughts and attitudes in how they speak long before their actual words betray them. Sarcasm, condescension, or dismissive sighs are early warnings. These small shifts in vocal energy tell you that someone may not value you in the way they claim to. Watch for subtle changes in body language too. A person who leans back while smirking, rolls their eyes, or pauses too long before responding is showing you their real sentiment. Covert disrespect often sits in the gap between the spoken message and the nonverbal signal. Next, observe the timing. People who use subtle disrespect often do it strategically. They pick moments when you are distracted, tired, nervous, or emotionally open. They aim for opportunities when you are less likely to confront them or even notice the slight. That's why training yourself to stay attentive even in relaxed conversations is critical. When someone throws a jab while you're not expecting it, your awareness becomes your shield. You don't have to react aggressively, but recognizing it in the moment allows you to decide how to respond instead of being caught off guard. Another layer of covert disrespect comes through disguised criticism. It may sound like advice, concern, or humor, but it carries a negative undertone meant to undermine you. Phrases like "you're too sensitive," "relax, I was only joking," or "you always overthink things" are common tools. These statements don't just dismiss your feelings. They are designed to make you question your perception, making it easier for the person to continue disrespecting you without accountability. Once you recognize these tactics, you will no longer internalize them. You will see them for what they are: manipulation dressed as casual conversation. Listen to the patterns. Anyone can have a bad day, but covert disrespect becomes clear when the same types of remarks, tones, or behaviors repeat. Consistency reveals character. If someone repeatedly minimizes your achievements, makes you the punchline, interrupts you, or subtly questions your competence, they are showing you exactly where you stand in their mind. No matter how much they claim otherwise, their patterns give them away. Recognizing this early allows you to either address the behavior directly or distance yourself before deeper harm occurs. Trust your internal cues. Your body often picks up disrespect before your mind fully processes it. If something feels off, heavy, or uncomfortable in a conversation, pay attention. Discomfort is data. It doesn't automatically mean someone is malicious, but it does mean there is something worth noticing. When you give yourself permission to honor those signals, you strengthen your ability to detect disrespect instantly. You stop giving people the benefit of the doubt at the cost of your own boundaries. The more you practice this level of awareness, the faster you will catch covert disrespect. It becomes instinctive. You stop explaining away someone's rudeness and start observing the reality of their behavior. This shift protects your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being. Protecting your boundaries with certainty begins long before you ever speak a word. It starts internally with the clarity you hold about who you are, what you allow, and what you absolutely will not tolerate. People often test boundaries not because they want to harm you, but because they want to understand where your edges are. And if those edges are soft, vague, or inconsistent, they notice immediately. When a person senses hesitancy in your voice, nervous laughter, or the tendency to smooth things over, they instinctively learn that your boundaries can be pressed, bent, or negotiated. So protecting them is first about eliminating that internal question mark. You have to decide that your worth is non-negotiable and that your comfort is just as important as anyone else's. Saying no sounds simple, but for many people, that word carries weight: fear of disappointing someone, fear of conflict, fear of seeming difficult. But certainty in boundaries requires accepting that other people's reactions are not your responsibility. When you refuse to own their frustration, their disappointment, or their discomfort, you give yourself permission to prioritize your peace. This is the mental shift that makes your boundaries feel real not just to others but to yourself. The more confidently you stand behind your decisions, the faster people learn the limits of how they can interact with you. Certainty also comes from consistency. A boundary is only as strong as your follow-through. If you allow exceptions based on mood, guilt, or pressure, your boundary isn't truly a boundary, it's a preference. People don't respect uncertain limits. They respect unwavering ones. That consistency communicates something powerful. You take yourself seriously. When you repeat the same standard every time, people stop testing it. They realize your no is a final answer, not the first step in a negotiation. And when you live from that place, you stop attracting people who rely on crossing lines to feel superior, and you naturally filter for those who want to treat you with respect. Protecting your boundaries also requires emotional regulation. When someone pushes you, tries to provoke you, or uses guilt to manipulate you, the most powerful response is calm clarity. The moment you react emotionally, anger, frustration, tears, defensiveness, you shift from power to vulnerability. But when your tone stays steady and your body language remains composed, you signal that you are not moved or intimidated. Calmness is a form of silent authority. It shows that your boundary is not coming from fear or insecurity, but from a grounded understanding of your self-worth. People often listen more to the tone of your boundary than the words themselves. Another essential part of boundary protection is choosing the right language. Boundaries should be direct, clean, and minimal. Too many words, too many explanations, and too much justification weaken your stance. When you feel obligated to over-explain, you place your authority in someone else's hands. You are trying to convince them that you deserve to protect yourself. Instead, speak in statements, not stories. Replace "I'm sorry, I just don't think I can" with "that doesn't work for me." Replace "I hope you understand" with "this is my decision." Language frames power. The stronger your language, the more respect you command, even from people who don't like your boundary. Finally, protecting your boundaries with certainty requires understanding that the people who respect your limits are the ones who deserve access to you. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut the world out. They are filters designed to let the right people in. When you enforce them firmly, you attract relationships built on mutual respect, clear expectations, and emotional safety. You eliminate chaos before it begins. And most importantly, you send a message to the world and to yourself that you value your time, energy, and emotional space enough to guard them fiercely. Manipulative language patterns often slip under the radar because they're designed to sound harmless, reasonable, or even caring. But once you begin paying attention to the structure, tone, and timing of what someone says, you start to see the psychological mechanisms behind their words. A person who wants control rarely goes for direct confrontation first. Instead, they test your emotional boundaries through subtle linguistic cues. They may distort facts, blur responsibility, or twist your reactions so that you begin doubting your own perception. This is why decoding manipulative language isn't about memorizing specific phrases. It's about understanding how manipulation feels and how it attempts to shape your inner narrative. One of the most common indicators of manipulative language is when someone tries to redefine your reality. They might say things that minimize your experiences or imply that your emotional responses are an overreaction. Even small statements like "you're remembering it wrong," "you're too sensitive," or "that didn't happen like that" can chip away at your confidence in your own judgment. The goal of this kind of language is to move you away from your center, because once you begin questioning yourself, you become easier to influence. These tactics operate quietly, but their impact accumulates over time until you instinctively look to the other person for emotional or psychological cues. Another layer of manipulation involves language that redirects accountability. People who rely on these tactics often avoid direct responsibility, so their words become tools for shifting blame or guilt onto you. Instead of acknowledging their role in a conflict or wrongdoing, they use language that subtly places the burden on your shoulders. They may say things that imply you're creating problems, misunderstanding them, or making their life more difficult. Statements like "if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have reacted this way," or "I only said that because you pushed me," are engineered to confuse cause and effect. This strategy also pressures you into managing their emotions, which becomes a form of psychological leverage. Manipulative language can also appear deceptively kind. Some people use praise, affection, or agreement as a tool rather than a genuine expression. They learn what you want to hear, then weaponize it to keep you compliant. They might flatter you, exaggerate appreciation, or mirror your values, not because they genuinely mean it, but because it makes you easier to mold. When the positive reinforcement stops abruptly, you feel compelled to earn their warmth again. This creates an emotional imbalance that grants them control without ever needing to appear forceful. Understanding this pattern requires you to pay attention not just to words, but to consistency and intent behind them. Then there's language that appeals to fear or uncertainty. Manipulators often hint at consequences, not through threats, but through suggestion. They might plant ideas that make you doubt your future, your capabilities, or your relationships. These statements can be subtle. "Are you sure you can handle that?" Or "I don't think anyone else would put up with what you do." The intention is to weaken your confidence, making you more dependent on their approval or guidance. When you internalize these doubts, you begin adjusting your behavior to avoid losing the connection, even if the connection is unhealthy. To decode manipulative language effectively, you must train yourself to listen beyond the surface. Words matter, but intention matters more. Notice when someone's language consistently forces you to defend your reactions, explain your feelings, or justify your boundaries. Pay attention to how they respond to your discomfort. Manipulative people rely on your silence, your hesitation, and your desire to keep things peaceful. The more aware you become of these linguistic patterns, the faster you can interrupt their influence. Recognizing these cues is not just about exposing manipulation, it's about reclaiming your mental clarity, emotional stability, and sense of self. When you respond with calm, controlled confidence, you immediately shift the entire dynamic of the interaction, not by overpowering the other person. By refusing to be emotionally hijacked, people often expect a reaction: anger, defensiveness, panic, because those responses make you easier to manipulate or dominate. But when you remain steady, composed, and unbothered, you interrupt their strategy. You show that you govern your inner state, and that alone communicates strength more clearly than any aggressive comeback ever could. Confidence in this form isn't loud, reactive, or performative. It's the kind of presence that makes the other person rethink their approach, because nothing they say seems to penetrate your emotional equilibrium. That's where your power lies, not in matching their energy, but in mastering your own. Controlled confidence allows you to detach from the emotional bait hidden inside certain comments. When someone tries to undermine you, they're usually testing boundaries to see if you're easily pushed off balance. Whether it's someone diminishing your achievements, questioning your decisions, or trying to provoke insecurity, your steady tone and grounded body language signal that you refuse to internalize the jab. You're not ignoring the comment, you're showing that it carries no weight. This shifts psychological leverage back to you because the other person now realizes that the tools they rely on, sarcasm, pressure, emotional triggers, are ineffective. Another reason calm confidence is so powerful is that it slows the entire interaction down. People who manipulate or challenge you often rely on speed, fast accusations, fast emotions, fast reactions. They want to catch you off guard so you make mistakes or second guess yourself. When you stay calm, you create space, space to interpret, space to choose your response, space to analyze what's really being said beneath the surface. You allow yourself access to clarity that reactive people never have. In that clarity, you can identify whether the behavior you're facing is disrespect, insecurity, power, seeking, or simple carelessness. And once you see the intention behind the words, you know exactly how to respond without escalating the situation. Confidence in this controlled form also requires self-trust. You trust your perception, your boundaries, and your internal compass. When someone challenges you, they're often trying to weaken that trust, making you question whether you're overreacting, misinterpreting, or being too sensitive. Your calm response communicates that you trust your judgment enough not to be swept into doubt. You can acknowledge their words without surrendering your stability. This builds a foundation where you stop explaining yourself excessively, stop trying to prove your value, and stop giving people emotional access they haven't earned. Staying calm doesn't mean suppressing emotion, it means directing it. You're not robotic, you're intentional. Instead of responding with impulsive frustration or defensiveness, you channel your emotional energy into posture, tone, and measured speech. Every word becomes deliberate, every pause becomes meaningful. This makes people listen differently. They notice that you don't rush to fill silence, that you're not eager to win approval, and that you don't need to overpower anyone to feel secure. Your presence becomes felt not through volume but through precision. This approach also protects you from being misinterpreted or used against yourself. Emotional reactivity often gives people ammunition. They twist your tone, exaggerate your words, or claim you're being aggressive. But calm confidence leaves no cracks for someone to exploit. Your responses remain clean, factual, and centered. Even if someone tries to escalate, they look unbalanced while you maintain composure. That imbalance becomes visible to everyone present, including the person who initiated the conflict, and it often forces them to retreat or correct their behavior because they no longer have control of the narrative. Finally, calm confidence teaches others how to treat you. People learn quickly that you don't reward disrespect with chaos, nor do you crumble under pressure. You respond, but you do so on your terms. Over time, this creates an environment where people think carefully before speaking to you in a way that crosses boundaries, because they know they won't get emotional compliance, they won't gain power, and they won't shake your center. They're simply met with a version of you that is untriggered, unmoved, and unwavering in your sense of self. Shifting the power dynamic back to you starts with understanding that power is rarely taken. It is usually handed over in subtle ways. When someone challenges you, disrespects you, or attempts to manipulate your emotions, their goal is often to pull you into their frame, their energy, and their agenda. The moment you react impulsively or emotionally, you're already playing the game they set up. Regaining power begins with reclaiming your frame, the mental space where you decide what matters, what you respond to, and how much access someone gets to your emotional world. People lose power not because they're weak, but because they allow someone else to dictate the tone, the pace, and the emotional temperature of the interaction. When you learn to control these variables, you shift the power dynamic without ever raising your voice or proving anything. The first level of power is internal. It's the calm, grounded presence that communicates you are not easily shaken. When someone uses dismissive language, tries to undermine you, or throws subtle jabs to test your self-worth, your response is not to match their aggression, but to maintain your composure. This is psychological dominance, not through force, but through stability. When you're not rattled, the other person loses their leverage. They can't provoke you, they can't pull you off balance, and they can't dictate your behavior. This alone shifts power dramatically because it creates uncertainty on their end. People who rely on manipulation are most effective when you are reactive. When you're not, they lose their primary tool. The second level of shifting power is through strategic communication. You don't need to explain yourself excessively. You don't need long justifications. You don't need to argue point by point to earn respect. Power lies in being concise, clear, and decisive. When someone says something insulting or dismissive, instead of escalating, you deliver a calm response that sets a boundary. That won't work for me. I'm not engaging with that. Let's stay respectful. These statements are short, controlled, and highly effective because they signal that you won't play the game. They allow you to assert your position without stepping into emotional chaos. They also force the other person to confront the fact that you control yourself and, by extension, the direction of the conversation. The third level of power involves your presence. People read you before they hear you. Your body language, your eye contact, your stillness, all of it communicates who has the upper hand. When you remain physically relaxed, when your gestures are minimal, when your breathing is steady, you're showing the other person that you're not intimidated. Predators, emotional or psychological, feed on perceived weakness, but when you hold your space without shrinking, you send a message that you are not easily influenced. This is the type of confidence that silences hostility because it eliminates the reward the other person is seeking. Another crucial part of shifting the dynamic is refusing to enter emotional debt. Emotional debt happens when you overinvest in someone's behavior, approval, or reactions. The less someone's opinion controls your emotional world, the more power you naturally reclaim. Manipulative people lose interest in those they can't sway. Difficult people become cautious around those they can't destabilize, and disrespectful people think twice when they see their tactics failing. You're not engaging on their level, and that leaves them with nothing to grasp. Finally, shifting power back to you means being willing to walk away, mentally, emotionally, or physically. Detachment is one of the strongest forms of personal power because it tells the other person that the interaction does not define your worth. When you're willing to leave any situation that diminishes you, you instantly become the most powerful person in the room because true power is the ability to choose yourself over the chaos others bring into your life.